Got it. Okay. Could you also chat a little bit more kind of mechanically about how the process works if a client wants to, start working with you in the next few weeks and, what is you mentioned they're going to be using Dropbox to upload files. How are they going to be communicating with you? And then, how is the whole package going to come together and then submitting it, mailing it, checks, all that. How does that whole experience look like, for investors who are working with your team?
Sure. So when the investors reach out to us, the first step is, of course, we get retained. And once we're retained, we do two things. We set up a Dropbox and we set up our e-questionnaires where we're sending out information requests to the client so that they're filling out information that'll be populated in their immigration form. Simultaneously, we interview the client about what funds that they plan on utilizing, what they're planning on liquidating, when they're planning on liquidating, what the timelines are. Once we interview the client, we create a customized list of source of funds documents. Once we provide that customized list, the client will start uploading documents to Dropbox, and we will start data mining those documents. So 7 years of tax returns, 7 years of bank statements, 7 years of W-2, employment confirmation letter, cover-to-cover passports. The third step that's been added because of the adjustment of status is clients that go into rural projects, we highly recommend that they do their medical. So when the file opens in under 2 years, the government doesn't RFE us for a medical and the green card isn't unnecessarily delayed. While we're processing the documents, we may have questions for the client. We prefer to communicate either through phone calls or WhatsApp because we feel like email slows down our interactions with the client, and we like to do this in real time. So like I said, on any given week, we're working with 6 to 7 clients, and we will only take a new tranche of clients once those files are closed out. We will not take 20 clients at a time and not be attentive to their source. So real-time communication, real-time responses. We tend to be available off hours. So clients are usually done work at 5 o'clock. We tend to work closely with the client from 5 to midnight, especially in the tech sector. Clients work incredibly hard, and so we have to be available off hours and on the weekends for the clients. Once the file is ready, we tend to assemble our file electronically with the cover letter and index of exhibits, and we walk the client through the file so they understand what it is that we've said in our story and what it is that their story is and whether it's accurate or not. I believe there are very few players in the market that actually have a copy of the entire file that is printed and provided to the client for a review before it's shipped out. So we have our clients looking at the entire copy that's going to USCIS, being able to give us comments in real time on Dropbox or over WhatsApp or through the comment feed on Word. So we tend to rely heavily on technology. We're a young firm, so we tend to do things young way, is not just relying on emails. The one thing you will not see with our firm is communication with paralegals. Whatever attorney you're working with is the attorney who will be communicating with you from beginning to end on your process. We also are one of the few firms which make sure that we avoid RFEs. What I mean by that, in case of a gift or a loan, we like to file addendums. When there are gifts involved, once a tax return is filed, 708, 709 is filed, we like to supplement that with USCIS. If you've liquidated assets that have capital gains, we like to file your tax returns and let the government know that you've made tax compliance or your relatives made tax compliance. Similarly with the loan, we like to proactively submit documentation pertaining to loan repayment so the government doesn't have a chance to RFE. Before they RFE, they understand that the client has paid off the loan and there's a no-due certificate available, and all those funds have been paid using legal income. So we try and be proactive, especially for Indian, Chinese nationals. It's very important that we go out of our way to avoid RFEs because retrogression can hit anytime. And once it's all done, we tend to send the file to FedEx. We solely rely on FedEx because of their guarantee shipments. FedEx prints the file. Like I said, any file on an average is 4,000 to 5,000 pages. FedEx will print it, and then it will be shipped through FedEx either overnight or 2-day guaranteed delivery. We want to make sure that we save a couple of things. Proof of delivery, because there have been instances where it's been delivered and a receipt notice has not been issued. Proof of check cashing, right? We like to save a copy of the check that was used to make the payment. We want to make sure that the files don't come back if kids are aging out. So there are some best practices that we like to follow. And so no administrative errors happen on our end. It's a very close process where we work closely with the client, and we tend to sign the clients up for text message notifications. So via text message notifications, the clients will know that their file has been accepted and their receipts are being processed, and this information directly goes to the clients, which gives them a sense of security. So we tend to work a lot in real time. We do not have a giant pipeline where you're waiting for 6 months for us to work on your file. If we've said it's going to get done in 3 weeks, it's going to get done in 3 weeks if the client cooperates.
Got it. Got it. I know in the last, few years, you've had quite a few investor clients who, started out working with a different EB-5 immigration attorney or just a different immigration attorney, and they weren't happy for one reason or the other, and kind of ended up switching and choosing to bring you on to help fix mistakes, or because things weren't getting done. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what that's been like, and what are some of the most common issues that those types of clients have brought up, and why they've kind of switched over to working with you?
Yeah, we have a lot of clients that have switched over in the last 3 years. Specifically, number one complaint we get is, I've been waiting to get this file for 6 months. And every time I produce a document, the attorneys come back and say, well, you're missing this document, you're missing that document. Clients are happy to providing our experience documents because they want to make sure that their cases are tight. However, there's a lot of delay and lags with the big firms because they're more volume shops, right? So we hear a client say, I send out an email and then I don't get a response for 2 to 3 weeks. Or we will hear clients say, I've never spoken to the attorney since I paid the retainer, and the clients want to talk to the attorney. We've often seen that a couple of big shops tend to outsource their source of funds work. What do I mean by that? If there is a big firm that does not understand how to do Indian source of funds, instead of declining to take the file, they take the file and they'll outsource that source of funds to another attorney. And so the client ends up not just communicating with the first attorney they retain, but also the second contractor that's working on the case. And things get lost in translation. So I think it's very important that when clients are retaining attorneys, that they talk to them, that they understand what the expertise of the attorneys are before signing up with them. There are clients who really like big law firms, but then come around and will say, hey, I would like to get a response, or I would like you to tell me when things change, when rules change, or when USCIS is issuing 5-year EADs versus 2-year EADs. I want to make sure that I can contact my attorney if I'm going to travel abroad. The biggest issue we've seen is inadequate documentation through RFEs. So we have worked on a ton of RFEs that were issued to other law firms where documentation wasn't done correctly, or incorrect documents were submitted, or it was just inadequate. The biggest issue we have in those cases is most of these attorneys don't retain a copy of the file that was filed with USCIS, which leaves us guessing as to what was filed the first time. We need to be careful, because if we contradict what was said in the first instance, there's perjury involved. So I think it's very important for all the clients listening to the webinar today that before any file goes out to USCIS, you absolutely get to review what is being filed in your name, and you absolutely have a copy of the documentation that is being filed, because without that, it's going to be impossible for any attorney to respond to an RFE and not contradict what was previously said. And in the end, I say, usually dollars, cost is a big factor for a lot of clients when they're signing up. And I like to tell my clients, I'm not the cheapest attorney and I'm not the most expensive attorney, but I am the most attentive attorney. So if you tend to go for that very cheap attorney that's doing source, that's way below market rate, you're going to get 50 pages versus a 5,000 page application. You're going to have to wait 6 weeks in order to get a response to that email. or you're working with someone who doesn't know what EB-5 is and what it entails, which is why they're charging such a low amount. So it's extremely important to make sure that you vet the background of the attorney. You try and understand that the attorney isn't specifically in bed with the regional center or isn't representing the regional center. And it's important that the attorney be very proactive and respond to your questions, because sometimes there's just no time. Recently, we've seen a lot of layoffs, and there are loans involved in those transactions. And the client will call us and say, I've gotten laid off, there's a loan involved, I need to keep paying these loan interest and principal payments. What can I do to remain in compliance, right? And then we have to come up with a strategy on how to pay that loan without a default, because that would cause issues on source of funds end. So you really need someone who's able to communicate with you, who's looking out for your best interests, and who also understands what source of funds is and what EB-5 is.
Got it. Okay. All right, I think that pretty much covers all the major topics we wanted to cover today. So I think to wrap up, what are your kind of top 3 pieces of advice for investors who are considering doing an EB-5 investment? What do they kind of need to be aware of and be thinking about? And then if they are interested in setting up a time to chat with you initially to see if working together is a good fit and if they could even qualify for an application, what does that next step look like for them?
I have the most important suggestion I have for clients is that they should talk to an attorney first before they go project hunting, because a lot of times clients will come to me and they will have no idea what it is to look for. And as an immigration attorney, it is my job to educate my clients, whether the client is willing to take some risk, no risk on immigration front, how to assess a project, how to assess whether the project is fully funded, whether there's immigration risk involved. All these questions can be answered by the immigration attorney that you're working with, and what criteria you need to set when you're evaluating a project. So that is my biggest pointer to clients is, if I were an investor today, my recommendation is find your attorney first, then with the attorney's guidance, start scoping out projects that may work for you. Second suggestion definitely is do not liquidate, do not move money, do not make any moves without talking to an attorney. And final point is, we do get tons of requests for consultations from clients, and we're happy to provide that, but we also tend to have very busy seasons right as the fiscal year ends. So what I mean by that is when October kicks in, October 1st, USCIS's visa quota, DOS's visa quota resets. At that point, H-1B holders, L-1 holders tend to notice that the visa dates aren't proceeding fast enough or aren't moving forward at all. And so they tend to fall back on EB-5. During those months, which is October, November, December, January, it's usually a very busy time. So if clients are looking to kind of file EB-5, I think January, February, March is kind of known to be a lull period where clients will get more attention from attorneys. But as you come closer to the reset of the fiscal year, attorneys are going to be more busy. One suggestion I do have for clients is I'll get questions over email asking legal source of funds related questions. It's very difficult for us to answer those questions over email without understanding your background, without understanding the background of the donor, without understanding where you're looking to borrow funds from. So I think that my recommendation to clients is you reach out to me, try and schedule a 20-minute consult, give me some background so I can then understand what your source is and give you guidance accordingly. Do not send questions on, my mother's giving me a gift, will that work? Well, I wouldn't know the answer to that because I would have to know where your mom's getting the money from. What asset is she liquidating? So it's an in-depth discussion that takes time. So I'd recommend sending a WhatsApp if you're ready to pull the trigger, scheduling that initial consultation, and then getting the ball rolling on the process.
Great. Thank you very much. That was super helpful. And again, if you are interested in exploring an EB-5 investment and getting more information about the source of funds and what your application could look like, please reach out to Anahita. Her WhatsApp and email and website are there on the screen. And for any questions about the projects, about Twin Lakes, the rural EB-5 loan project or our Boynton Beach multifamily project with a higher investment return, please reach out to us, WhatsApp or email, or visit our website, and we'll be happy to get you more information about any of those projects or other projects that we have open. So with that, thank you again for taking time to listen to the webinar, and we look forward to working with you in the future.